And what we're going to be covering in this video, nocking the arrow, hook, grip, set, position. The basics of connecting the arrow to the bow. It's going to glide. And this is a smooth, flowy dance and not a bump, bump, jiggle, jiggle dance. Hi there, Coach Yale here. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Welcome to the channel here, and also welcome to the Atlanta Archery Club. Today we're going to be talking about the next couple of steps in the shot cycle, technique-wise. The other day we were talking about, in our last video, all the aspects of setting the stance and when we do that in the shot cycle. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is lining ourselves up with the target, right? Setting our stance lined up. The next thing we're going to do, and what we're going to be covering in this video, nocking the arrow, hook, grip, set, position. Okay? So, nocking the arrow sounds easy enough. So let's just talk about, especially if you're just getting into archery, the basics of connecting the arrow to the bow, and that's called nocking the arrow. Like knock, 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 okay? It's not notching, which I hear quite often. It's nocking the arrow. Okay, so why is it called nocking the arrow? Well, because this little piece, okay, this little piece up here, it's called a knock. Mr. Knock, I guess. I mean, maybe originally it was called a notch because it's kind of like a notch, but it's called a knock, okay? Now, nocking the arrow, connecting the arrow to the bow. On most bows, some bows don't have this. However, most bows have what's called can you see that? A nocking point. This little point here on the string. This one is tied with a piece of string. Nocking points can be made out of plastic. They could be a piece of brass clipped onto the string. Regardless of the name, that little indicator is called a nocking point. So your arrow is connected to the bow, in this case, beneath the nocking point. Okay, and it's typically always beneath. Some bows have two nocking points, one above, one below. This one happens to have one, and it's above. This prevents the arrow from riding up the string. Nocking point. Once you connect the arrow, you do want to listen for the click. The click lets you know your arrow is attached safely to your bow. Now, on this particular bow, and on many bows, they have this little wire piece, okay? This thing is called an arrow rest. Arrow rests come in many shapes and sizes. Plastic ones, little ones, big ones, magnetic ones. This is the magnetic rest, okay? This is the bicaster one. I love it. It works great, okay? So, if your bow has an arrow rest, you're going to want to use it. Some bows, more traditional bows, no arrow rest. And the arrow would be resting flat. And this piece of the bow is called the shelf because it looks like a little shelf, okay? So more traditional bows, you're shooting off the shelf. This bow has an arrow rest, and so we're going to use it. The other important aspect of connecting the arrow to the bow. Who knew there were so many things to talk about with simply connecting the arrow to the bow? Okay, now you know. 99% of arrows, 3 feathers, 2 colors. Nowadays, also some folks like to shoot 4 feathers, okay? Personal preference. In most arrows, you're gonna find 3 feathers, 2 colors. And if you see here, 2 of the same, 1 odd colored feather. The odd colored feather wants to face away from the bow. This is because as you loose your arrow, it's going to glide across the bow. Okay, this part of the bow called a riser. We're going to do another couple of videos on the parts and pieces and anatomy, but for now, just so you know, the handle piece, riser. So the odd feather wants to face away from the riser, so as it glides, smooth. If you put the odd colored feather towards the bow, bump, 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 jiggle, 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 jiggle. Okay? And this is a smooth, flowy dance and not a bump, bump, jiggle, jiggle dance. They're both very fun. However, this is more of a smooth dance. Okay? Okay. Some of my students think that's funny. Okay, maybe you did too.